Hello, everybody, and welcome to episode 3 of our new match preview series here on the Hornet Talk podcast. I'm delighted to be joined by Caden and a very special guest this evening, Luke from Swans Chat will be joining us. But before I introduce Luke, a very good evening to Caden. Caden, how are you?
Good evening, Liam. Yeah, I'm really good. Looking forward to this Swansea game. It should be a good one.
Yeah. And a very warm welcome to Luke from Swans Cast. Obviously, you've been on Do Not Scratch Your Eyes, so you're known a bit in the fan base. Good evening. How are you?
Yeah, good to be here. Thanks for having me. Hope you're both doing all right as well. And be good to talk about the match.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, before we get into the questions, whatnot, I'm going to ask Luke, tell us a bit about yourselves and where we can find you.
Yeah, so we're a podcast. We do match previews like this as well on our channel, primarily on YouTube or any audio platforms like Spotify and all the rest of them. If you just type in Swanscast, you can find us. And then generally on all the social medias, but we're probably not the best at posting stuff. Twitter's our biggest one, but again, Twitter has just gone a bit quiet from our side, I think, in recent months. Honest, don't get me wrong, but that's probably where you're going to see us the most. But if you want to find our stuff, YouTube and Spotify or any podcasting platform is where you can actually tune in.
And I know you're part of the TalkSport fan network, isn't that right?
Yeah. So now and again they get us on. I think it's Thursdays, might be Tuesdays, can't remember now. On the TalkSport 2 for like the championship show they do. So you might hear me now and again on there. I'm not on there this week for this game, but yeah, it's decent listen. They obviously go through the EFL, so everyone gets a couple of goes a season talking about a few matches. So if you in the car around, I think it's 6 o'clock normally it goes out. Give us a listen.
Yeah, I will do. Right, moving straight into it then. Luke, 2 losses in your last 5, both against playoff opposition. How important do you think a win against us, who are also challenging for playoffs, will be for your season?
I mean, I think there's the narrative of us at the moment on away days is quite poor. So I think we need to change that. So like it doesn't matter who the opposition is. If it's a defeat, it's just another defeat in what is a long run of bad away form. So the goal is to stop that happening, whether that's a draw or win. And we've come close. You mentioned there being some tough opposition, but they've all been quite tight. That we've been in all of the games, really. The one that perhaps stands out as we were lucky to be in the game was Millwall, but the rest of them we've been more than deserved to be in the game, and if not deserved more from them, especially the Hull game just gone. Like they went 2-0 up, but didn't really tell the full story of the game and how they got their goals, but how we also perhaps missed some sitters, let's say. So yeah, I think going into this one, another tricky one, of course, but we shouldn't be necessarily worried about the opposition. I think what we're doing is good. We just need to carry that on, and hopefully a result will come soon. I'm not saying it will be this week, but they're not exactly playing bad, is what I'm trying to say.
Yeah, I mean, our home form's been pretty solid. If you look at it, we've only had 2 losses this season at home, and one of them was against Millwall, and then earlier in the season when we debuted our special edition Elton John shirt, which was disappointing to say the least, losing to Blackburn. But yeah, just really disappointing. But obviously, when I look back to the reverse fixture, I think it was 1-1 if I remember correctly. And Iran Kunda scored that beautiful free kick, and then you pretty much dominated from there and had us at bay. So you were pretty good. Now, I just wanted to ask you quickly about Zdanja Potnik. Obviously, he's quite a wanted man at the minute, which this season, 13 goals, which is the championship top goal scorer. I mean, he's really impressive for you. How important do you think he'll be in this game on Saturday?
Well, he scored over like 40% of Swansea's goals this season, so he'll definitely be important. Ultimately, if he's not on the pitch, we score half as many goals there or thereabouts. And his number 2, which is Adam Iza, who got signed in the summer, is currently injured. So not to say Liam Cullen, who kind of became more of a number 10 than a striker, but now is having to slot in there, isn't going to be able to do a decent job. He scored a goal against Hull from a corner, a header, perhaps not the most likely source of a headed corner goal, but he got one in. So he's more than capable of sometimes getting a goal as well. But ultimately, this season's been all about for Potnik. So yeah, he'll definitely be important for us if we're going to come away with something, especially away from home. I think, we do need other players to start contributing more with the goals. But I think if we're going to go and get something away after what's been a bad run I've just mentioned, then you need the one player that's really bagging all the goals to step up and deliver. And hopefully he can do that, because he missed an absolute sitter against Hull. After all of this talk and speculation and everyone sort of raving about him after he got to the top of the goal scoring charts of the Championship, the game immediately after he did that, he probably missed what would have been the easiest goal that he would have scored all season, and he's put it wide, essentially an open goal, and he's a tap in with no keeper there, and he's tapped it outside the post. So you would have put all the money in the world on him scoring that, but he didn't. So hopefully he's got that out of the way and he can get back to form this week.
Yeah, a striker I really rate, to be fair. I liked him. When you first signed him, I thought, oh, that would be a good signing. And then when you look at it now, teams like West Ham wanting him, it'll be a struggle probably, do you reckon, to keep hold of him this summer? I think it'll be tough to keep hold of him.
Yeah, maybe in the summer. I think there's a little bit of speculation now, but it's one of those where it's in the background. So I'm not saying it's over for January. Obviously, anything can happen going into the last couple of days. If a team's desperate enough to come and pay what will probably be a big fee, then there's a chance he could go in the next couple of days. I don't think it's likely, but it's not impossible. However, in the summer, if he continues the way that he's going, there'll definitely be people looking at him. And that'll probably be a challenge to keep him on the books then. Quite often, you can get lucky in the Championship where a striker like that needs to have 2 seasons of having that sort of output before a Premier League club will come knocking. Not always the case, don't get me wrong. It depends on the market, of course. But we had it with Joel Perreault a couple of years ago. There was rumoured interest after he had a 20-goal season. It never materialised. He did it again, and then he got his move. So kind of hoping that's how it plays out. But that's probably me just hoping, fool's hope more than anything. I think it is going to be tricky. There's already rumours and speculation. And I guess the difference to Perreault is he wasn't Championship top goal scorer when he was with us. He was perhaps, knocking on the door, but I don't think he got over the line. Whereas for Potnick, being in that role or in that position currently, he might not finish there, of course, but he is there now. And playing for the team that up until recently had the lowest XG in the league, those things shouldn't go hand in hand. So I guess that makes him stand out even more.
Yeah, absolutely. I think, well, he's just been incredible for you this season. I think he's a player that we really need to watch out for. And linking back to you when you said Joel Perreault, I think we were linked with him at one point from you, and I think we missed out on him because Leeds got him, which was he's proved to be a good signing for Leeds last season. Obviously, not getting the minutes he would want this season, but there's rumours of him. I think it was Coventry I was reading earlier or somewhere like that. But yeah. Anyway, moving on. Obviously, Vitor Matos, he was on the books of Liverpool. Well, not on the books of Liverpool, but he was coaching with, I think, Jurgen Klopp, if I'm rightly correct.
Yeah.
I think, yeah. He became your new manager in November after replacing Sheehan, who Sheehan really was your interim manager and he came in. So, I mean, he didn't do the job that everyone thought he would this season. But how influential has Vitor Matos been for you? And has he improved you, do you think?
Yeah, Alan Sheehan did really good as interim or caretaker manager at the end of last season. Got given the job, I think it was before the last game of the season. They just secured that and shuttled the noise up. And ultimately, as much as it proved to be the wrong decision in hindsight, at the time, you can't begrudge the decision because you just could not give him the job after the form that he produced and the results that he had got. Now, having said that, not an awful lot really changed going into this season. The main difference was last year we were on the correct side of a tight scoreline and getting a 1-0 win or a 1-1 draw or 0-0, that sort of thing. And we managed to push our season on as a result of that. We weren't smashing the goals in and we weren't beating teams heavily. We looked comfortable relatively. Our defence was quite solid. So we were confident when we took lead in games that we'd be able to see that through. And I guess that's where this season, that aspect perhaps left a bit, or we were conceding goals from certain weaknesses like set pieces or just general crosses, or quite earlier in the season when they were adding silly amount of injury time onto games, we were often conceding late into that. So 96 or whatever minutes. That seems to have died down a bit now, but that was costing us earlier in the season. And for whatever reason, you expect, okay, that's fine. We had a decent start, actually. When we played you last time, I think we were hovering. We looked like we were in a playoff fight ourselves. And I think we were disappointed not to win that game and to go behind in the first place. And by the end of it, I thought maybe we should have got more out of it. But part of the problem is our goal scoring and chance creation, which probably was apparent then. And it just didn't really improve. And if anything, it got worse the longer that Sheehan was here. So where when your results are sporadic and up and down and inconsistent, as long as you can see improvements on the pitch, you're rewarded with a bit of time and patience. But I think the problem for Sheehan was there wasn't any improvement on the pitch really. And if anything, things went backwards. And that sturdy defence I spoke about started in the last 5-6 games, started not being sturdy and leaking some poor goals. And we started losing 3-0 and stuff like that, which is something that wasn't happening for a long time before. We were always in games even when we lost them. So you could always sneak that draw by the end or sneak that win by the end, but that stopped happening. And I think, and then fall into the bottom of the XG charts with the creation of chances as well. Like really, really had issues and, he had to go in the end. But Matos has come in and kind of, the first thing he did really was make everyone look like they're organised again. Like they kind of looked like they lost their way and didn't know what their jobs were in the last couple of games under Sheehan, which is why this sloppiness crept in. They all looked a bit confused, like no one knew what their roles were. But that seemed to come back quite quickly under Matos. But the main thing that he's really introduced is a really good tempo, high press with a lot of energy with the forward players that he's using. Generally, a striker, 2 wingers and 2 number 8s behind the striker. Sometimes a bit more defensive where there's not 2 from pushing on, but there's only 1. It's not quite a 10, if that makes sense, but it's like 8s, but they press really heavily and really hard. So for the first 60 minutes, you probably see that, and then there'll be changes. And then sometimes the changes do imbalance us a bit, but I think that's where we are at the moment in terms of what we need to improve on and learn on. And as a result of that, we get into more dangerous areas and we are being a bit more direct and clinical with the ball, and the decision-making is probably a bit better. There's a bit more tempo to it, whereas before it was quite laboured and slow, so the teams could get back into shape, and then we really just couldn't do anything to break them down. When we win the ball in those dangerous places, we can be quite quick to try and work an opportunity, which is what I think modern football is asking for these days. I think that's where a lot of the top teams get in their opportunities and goals for. Everything's so structured and rigid at the moment. Slow, laboured play is so much more difficult to win by, which is what historically Swansea's possession-based style has maybe been. But you'd have to adapt that to the modern times, really. And I think there's signs that is what he's doing. Obviously, it's hard to do that mid-season, but there is signs that is happening at the moment. I think he needs a few players to help, maybe in the summer, to bring in to play really how he wants. But it's quite incremental, but it's been positive. And our home form has been really strong as well, which obviously isn't relevant for this game. But I think that's important in how we've managed to drag ourselves away from what we were in the relegation fight. We were joint points for the bottom 3. So now we're, I think, 8 points clear. I could be wrong. It's there or thereabouts, but we were literally on the same points as them. So it's nice to have that breathing room, even after 2 months or whatever it is. So he's done a good job.
Yeah, it's definitely good to have a bit of breathing space, especially when you were looking down there and looking ominous over that relegation zone. It's never nice, really. Yeah. We've seen it a lot in the Premier League. When we were in the Premier League, it's not a nice feeling. And quickly before I pass over to Caden, just a quick word on, obviously your profile's grown a bit recently because of the likes of Luka Modric and Snoop Dogg investing in the club. How impactful do you think that's been for the club, boosting the profile?
I mean, I think it's positive. Obviously, all the eyeballs are on Wrexham, aren't they? But we're doing our own little thing. It's not quite the same, but it's exciting, isn't it? I think ultimately we got new owners now than we've had since we got relegated and all of the years we've been down here. But there's been a lot of noise and discontent around the lack of care and investment from those previous owners. What I will say is they were obviously keeping the club afloat in a stable way, which probably not it could have been run better, don't get me wrong, but it also could have been run far worse. However, these new owners that have come in, they seem to have ambition. They seem to be matching it with certain decisions, not always correct, don't get me wrong, but they have recognised that ultimately to compete and to try and get back to the Premier League and to try and get back up the table, you're going to need to spend, but we can't do that. So how can we do it? And that is to try and increase our revenue streams in a different way than perhaps what is the normal way in football. And I think a lot more teams will start going down this route because ultimately football is becoming expensive. It's becoming an expensive hobby for whatever owner owns a football club. And if you're not in the Premier League, quite often that expensive hobby is not worth it. And a lot of clubs are starting to struggle as a result of it. It's unsustainable the way that the Football League is set up right now, and certain clubs will be affected more than others. Our geography and catchment and size in Swansea is really to our detriment when it comes to those sort of things, what sponsorships we can have, how we can bring money in the traditional ways. So they've gone outside the box and they've brought in some names that are there for certain reasons. Modric is more there for the football nous, if you like. So when, in the boardroom, they're discussing, he will give that insight from inside the game. They're only 5%, by the way. It's not like they're massive. They're not the main owners of the club, but they have a say. And Snoop Dogg then is there to grow the commercial profile, to bring different revenue streams in. And we've already started seeing that in certain ways. So I think it's positive. I know certain fans look at it and think like, oh, that's not football. That's like, I don't know, like a bit of a joke, a bit of drama and all of this. But you know what? Like, if it helps us get some money in and to then put that through onto players on the pitch, I'm all for it. They obviously got to make sure that the pitch has been looked after as well as the back of house. But I think you need to kind of invest in the back of house to be able to invest on the pitch. And it probably is a bit of it takes time from the investment you put behind the scenes and to grow these income streams until you perhaps see it on a pitch. But you can't knock the ambition in terms of trying something different. And if it doesn't work, it doesn't work. But it's not really, it's not like it was working before anyway. So, and we had quite a productive summer. We spent more than what we used to spend in. And that was the first summer, really, after all of this has happened. So that's obviously positive signs. I don't think we'll necessarily go out and do that year in, year out and splash the cash. And I think they still got to be quite savvy with how they do it. But it was positive to see them doing that last year. And I think everyone was happy at the time with how our summer went. I think, the season afterwards has been a little bit disappointing, but maybe part of that is how many we brought in. So after a year's stability in the Championship, maybe all of those players will benefit next season and they will pay off a little bit later on.
Yeah, thank you for that. Now I'm going to go to Caden because I know he's got a couple of questions, but one main question. So go on, Caden.
Yeah, first of all, hi Luke, hope you're well. Just a quick question about your defence, really. More specifically, Ben Cabango. How crucial is he to your team? Because every time I've seen him play against us, I've always been really impressed by him.
Well, he's obviously captain of the team as well, so he is definitely important. He's the leader of the team, not just the backline. He's from our academy, so you get that link as well, where he's come through the system, the youth. He's played with a lot of players who have gone in the past who were important to us, and he will know, like the culture stuff around the club, like how important the derby matches are and stuff like that. Don't watch his highlights from the Hull game because he dropped an absolute clanger, which is why they went 1-0 up with a penalty. I don't know if you've seen absolute criminal handball where he's just going up in the air to jump for a header. And he's done that thing sometimes where they put their arms above the head to try and get that little bit of extra height. Yeah. But his arms didn't come down and one of them went towards the ball. You can't, it sounds ridiculous when I explain it. You can't really understand what his thinking is in that moment. Moment of madness probably cost us a chance of getting anything out of that game. But I'm sure he will learn from that and come back in this game fired up to try and wrong that right, if you like, and make amends in some way. So he is an important player for us. I think after Jay Felton, I could be wrong on this because I'm just saying this from the top of my head, but I think he's probably Swansea's most experienced player in terms of how long they've been at the club. It would be between him and Cullen, but I'm pretty sure after Jay Felton it will be Cabango second. So in terms of being around the club and in that atmosphere and in that environment as well, and how many appearances he's made for Swansea, he's one of the most important players there now, because we've lost a lot of our longer term players last summer and last season, with the likes of Mac Grimes, Carl Norton, Joe Allen leaving. It left essentially Felton, Cabango and Cullen as the ones that have been here the longest, but significantly less time, other than Felton. However, I still think that is valuable and very important. So yeah, he is definitely one that I wouldn't say is one to watch because he's a centre back. But in terms of you guys having success, he's the one that you perhaps got to try and get through. But his partner, obviously Cameron Burgess, has played at a higher level and is also far more experienced in football, not at Swansea, but in football. So they've got a decent partnership. They're perhaps a little bit on the slower side, but yeah, they're a good pair, and I think their experience definitely counts for something as well.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. And just on your team as a whole, who's the key player that you think Watford are going to have to be the most careful with to make sure that they don't get let loose and then you have an easier game than hopefully what we're going to give you?
Well, obviously we've spoke about for Potnick, so I won't speak about him, but his finishing is what you need to watch out for. It's not necessarily the rest of his game. He might look a bit invisible and then pop up with a goal, but part of the reason he might pop up with a goal will be because of the delivery from the left back, Josh Tyman, who he's a top assister this season. He quite regularly is now, but like every game, he's just putting chances on Vapotnik's plate or somebody else. I say somebody else putting a chance on a plate, but nobody's there. Basically, is the problem. He's got a very, very, very good left foot. He scored an absolutely spectacular goal earlier in the season, which I would recommend people checking out. I forget who the team was against, but it will be up there for goal of the season nominations at the end. So I'm sure it will do the rounds come the end of the season. But yeah, he's just phenomenal on that left foot, and because he's the left back, I think sometimes he can get into space that allows him to put that delivery in, because you're probably more occupied on defending against the wingers. So Ji Sung who will be probably playing on the left wing, and he's quite tricky himself. He likes taking players on. He's not always successful, and he's not always the most productive when it comes to the end result, goal contributions. But if he can take attention away and allow time and that little bit of time to pick his man out in the box, then he will do that. And again, I mentioned the miss that Vapotnik had against Hull. It was Timon that put it on a plate for him, and it was a very, very good ball into the box that snuck in through the defence in a way that it probably shouldn't have been allowed to, but that's the accuracy that he can have when he's given that time. So he's the one probably most likely to create a chance, and obviously coming from left back, perhaps is sometimes a bit unexpected.
Yeah.
Yeah, and just finally from me, on Matt Grimes, because obviously he left you in the summer for Coventry. How big of a gap has that left in your team, or have you been able to kind of manage the storm, per se?
I think we've managed the storm. I'm not saying it hasn't left a gap. I think it has. I don't think you can fully replace Matt Grimes and what he offers, and I think he's showing that with the job that he's doing at Coventry now, and they love him up there, and he's ever present in their team. And I think they would be concerned if he got injured that their form would drop off significantly, even if he looks a bit invisible when it comes to the headlines. He's what's making them tick, and that's what he did for us for years. We know all about that. Unfortunately, the way that he left, quite often Swansea fans don't talk about him in the best spirits these days, which I guess you could look at it two ways. Partly because of how important he was to us and the way that it all came about. There's a lot of resentment there, I think, that a lot of fans can't get over. And I'm not trying to say that they're wrong for that. But I know he was very important for us at the time. However, when he first left, we really struggled. Lewis O'Brien on loan last season really helped plug that hole in a different way. He didn't do the same job, but what he brought allowed us to play in a different way that helped us move forward. But this season specifically, Ethan Galbraith has been the one that's kind of come in and plugged that hole again in his own way. He's not the same, but he's probably the most similar we've got to him. But he's a player that we can also then build around. He's been the best outfield player for Swansea this season, other than the goals of Vapotnik. Been the best signing of the season by far. However, he has found himself playing right back recently due to the loss of form of Josh Key and injuries. So if he does start this week, I would imagine that's where he will be. However, I think he is also carrying a knock himself, so I'm not 100% sure he will be featuring in this game. However, I did say he's in right back, and he's not in the midfield, but in a way, since he's gone there, sometimes he's actually got a bit more freedom. So I'm not trying to compare him now, but imagine Trent Alexander-Arnold and how he would play at right back, where he would step into midfield. that is what Galbraith does, and he does it very, very well. When he initially started doing it, you think, oh, he'd get caught out, but he very rarely does still get caught out. When we're in possession of the ball, and we do like to keep possession when we can still, and our possession stats are still quite often on the higher side in the league. He just comes into midfield and acts as a fourth midfielder, and you see him sometimes more towards the left back than the right back because of that, which makes you worried if you do lose the ball in transition. But he always seems to be back in time, or like in those situations where we do lose the ball, he's able to recognize that and not get caught out. And he's got a very good, intelligent football brain. He's also able to play himself out of trouble quite often because he's really good on the ball with his footwork. He's also been excelling on international duty for Northern Ireland this season as well. So a lot of eyeballs on him. The player that you said about Vopotnik's interest in the summer, I think he will be another one we'd be having a battle to keep. But yeah, he's definitely been the one that's replaced what Matt Grimes vacated at Swansea. Obviously, you've got to evolve and move on. No player's the same. But yeah, he's probably a little bit more forward thinking than Grimes was. Like, Grimes is the engine room. He keeps you ticking. Galbraith, quite often, he can be a little bit more direct sometimes, whilst doing what Grimes did to a lesser extent. So it's more of a sort of hybrid, rather than just deep all the time. He probably benefits playing a little bit further up, which is why being a right back's kind of suited him, if anything, because he's not really getting marked. So when he does find space coming in as a fourth midfielder, he's been able to unlock defences, perhaps sometimes more than you expect, because there's been an argument to say, oh, we need him in midfield, but then he finds these pockets of space easier from right back because the teams are not set up to have their midfield mark in a right back, So like, there's pros and cons to it, but it's worked well the last couple of weeks when he's been there.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you for that. Now, obviously, you've talked about a lot of key players there, but we're going to move on to our next segment, which is our predicted lineup. So myself and Caden will give you ours, but before we do that, we'll move into yours. How tactically do you think you're set up? And I just want to touch upon a player that he's an underrated player, but I think he's got a lot of interest and people like him a lot. And I've heard good things about him. Obviously, goalkeeper Vigouroux, he's been pretty good this season for you. How influential do you think he'll be?
Yeah, I think, I'll be honest, I think he's one of, if not the best goalkeeper in the Championship. And I think in recent weeks, I think there have been a few shouts for that from even outside of Swansea, especially after his performance away at Millwall, where I said we were in a tight game. Probably shouldn't have been. That's the one that we shouldn't have been in. And the reason was because he was outstanding, making save out of save. And they eventually got through to get the winner at the end. But that goalkeeper performance was highlighted all over everyone's social media, all the normal outlets, to show how good it was, which, you like to see it, but also you're like, can we not share that to the world? I don't want people seeing that. Of course, the scouts will already know those things. But he's been really good since we signed him. We brought him in last summer after Carl Rushworth left on loan, and he was quite good for us. But I think he's come and thrived to being a first choice again after going into the Prem with Burnley and being third choice and not really getting a look in. He's come back to Championship level and kind of proved that he is capable. He's a really good shot stopper, first and foremost. The amount of double saves that he makes, and he shouldn't have any right of saving perhaps the follow-up, is incredible. And you can look at goalkeeper stats two ways. I think he's top of the saves chart in the Championship at the moment, which either says our defence is really poor or he's really good. So obviously we want to look at it from the perspective that he's standing above. But yeah, he's been invaluable to us, to be honest. And I will say he's definitely saved us numerous points this season and last season, which is obviously the job of a goalkeeper. But the good ones save that few extra points, and sometimes that can be the difference of important positions in the Championship. So
yeah, and then obviously tactically, you've mentioned a few players: Vopotnik, Fulton, Galbraith. Who else do you think is going to be in that starting 11 for you this weekend? Obviously, I've heard a lot about Adam Eder. I don't know if he's not starting as much because of Vopotnik and how well he's doing, but yeah, I'll leave it to you.
Yeah, so Ida won't be starting. He's injured. He's got I think it's hamstring. He's got some sort of muscle injury. He's out for a couple of months, unfortunately. So that is a bit of an issue for us. But he hasn't had as much of a look in as perhaps was expected because of Vopotnik's form, ultimately. Which, maybe Vopotnik's form was brought on by the competition. So you can't underplay that. I think that might have been part of the reason that because he started the season really well, but he was proven a point because there was speculation about him going to make room for this new striker. We ended up keeping both, and Vopotnik haven't looked back and has managed to maintain that first spot, and rightly so. Regarding the team, obviously Vigoro will be in goal. Depending on fitness, if Galbraith is fit, I'd imagine he starts right back. If he's not, it'll be Josh Key. Ben Cabango and Cameron Burgess will be in the middle of the back four. Josh Tymon on the left. I would imagine Felton will not start this one because he played against Hull. It'll probably be Marko Stamenic coming in. They basically do the same job, so they're kind of in and out at the moment with the congestion. And then going into, there'll be another two midfielders. He's been playing as like 2 number 8, so say Stamenic is there, he'll be the sitting one. The other two will be a little bit more advanced, but more box-to-box, number 8 style with a heavy press. I would imagine that will be Vidal and Franco. On the wings, then it would likely be Ronald and Ji-sung and Vopotnik up top as well.
Yeah, brilliant. Thank you for that. Now, Caden, before I go to my predicted lineup, what's yours then? What are you thinking?
Well, we have to take into account some of the injury news that we have had over the last couple of weeks. For me, in goal, it has to be Selvik. I'm not truly sold on Selvik fully yet, and just Baxter isn't a good enough backup. At right back, Ngakia, I think he's nailed on for it. A centre-back pairing of Pollock, if he's fit, and Abankwah. If Pollock isn't fit, then it'll be Caben and Abankwah with Mark Boller in at left-back. Into the midfield too, Hector Cipriano and Imran Louza. I think that's pretty self-explanatory. It's not going to be Naflis Mendy, considering his transfer interest over the last couple of days. He's been linked with a couple of clubs. Then I think it will be Ince, unfortunately. I would play Iran Kunda, but I don't think he will. Then it will be Chak Fadadze. Then it will be Marma. Again, I'd probably say we should start Bar over Marma for this one. But I have trust in Xavi, whatever he decides. And then leading the line, it has to be Mamadou Doumbia, purely because Luka Kieram I don't think can play as a sole striker. He can play as a two, but he can't play as the sole striker. So I would go with Doumbia on the sheer fact that, one, he plays a lot better there, but also is the fact that he drifts deeper slightly to then fan it out to the wingers and then bust a gut forward, which I think offers us a lot more than some of the things that LK9 has done, even though last game's improvement. So I would start Doumbia.
Yeah, mine's pretty similar to yours. I'm going to go a 4-2-3-1 formation, which we've seen in recent weeks. Agree with you in goal, Selvik. Baxter's, I don't think he's good enough for this level, obviously shown by Bristol City in the FA Cup. Centre-backs, I don't think Pollock's going to be fit, so I'll go with Kevin Caben Abankwah. Caben's been a bit... he's been a bit hit and miss for us, so I think Vopotnik could take advantage of that because he has been quite sloppy and he doesn't watch the ball that much, so he is quite disappointing when he plays at centre back. I think right back and left back, as you said, Caden, quite self-explanatory. Mark Bowler, Jeremy Ngakia, the main full-backs, but I just worry if Mark Bowler gets injured, we've got no one to replace him in that position, but hopefully that doesn't happen. Midfield too, you've completely nailed it on, Caden. I completely agree. Hector Cipriano, Imran Louza, Luke, probably a player you've heard a lot about this season. He's dropped off a little bit of late, but I still think when he plays, he's probably really influential for us and has the ability to change a game like that. So he's a really influential player for us, and I think he'll have a big impact to play this weekend. Now, attack, I've gone a bit different from you, Caden. Left wing, I would left attacking mid, left wing, whatever you want to call it. I would like to see, obviously, losing Vata to injury again, which is a real hammer blow for us because he's been out and he was really good for us at the start of the season. I think he played a full 90 against you earlier in the season, if I remember correctly. But yeah, I think we should probably start maybe Quadwo Bar on the left-hand side, let him play there on the left-hand side over Ince. Obviously, he's not as defensive, and Gracia likes the idea of Ince playing there because he goes back and defends. Now, attacking midfield, I know you said Dumbia up top, but I think Dumbia played quite well when he played in the attacking midfield role on Saturday, and he was really influential. So I think that's a good move there. And then on the right, obviously, Mama, you might have heard a little bit about him, Luke. He's been okay for us since he's come back from AFCON. He's been pretty good. He's dropped off in recent weeks. So I would like someone else to get their chance. Maybe Iran Kunda on the right-hand side, although I don't think that Javi Gracia will go that attacking minded in such a game. I don't think he likes the idea of going so attacking minded. And then up top, I think they partner each other well. If you look at Dumbia in behind Kieran Gard, I think they link up well together. I think they work better in that role instead of a front two, which we saw earlier in the season. So yeah, a 4-2-3-1, and that would be my lineup. Now, that is almost the end of the episode. Before I get the lads' score predictions, Caden, I'm going to ask you about deadline day, Monday on YouTube. Tell us a bit more.
Well, for the second time in our history, we are back by very popular demand. Deadline day live on Monday here on YouTube from 4 p.m. until the deadline shuts, with a little bit of a debrief afterwards. So be sure to join us there. For further details, check out our social pages, most notably X. We will be updating that constantly throughout deadline day and the upcoming days to keep you all up to date with everything to do with our deadline day stream. But we look forward to seeing you all there.
Yeah, thank you, Caden. Now, before we go, I'm going to get everyone's score predictions. So I'll start with you, Luke. What do you think the score's going to be this weekend?
I think it's going to be a tight game, to be honest. I'm going to go boring and go 1-1. I think, we do your points on the road. And I think you guys, maybe we're playing at a good time. The last couple of games, you've been struggling a little bit more. And I think you've been struggling to score as well. So I think 1-1 is perhaps a fair result.
Caden, do you agree?
Well, bottom line is a win we need. A win, otherwise it is not acceptable. The post-Christmas collapse is real. If we want to get out of the glut, we need to win. If this championship wasn't so poor, we wouldn't be around the playoffs. We would be 14th or 15th in this league. So I'm going to have to go positive. I'm going to say a 2-1 Watford win. But it is crucial we have to get it done. And if it doesn't, unfortunately, the Xavi out brigade is just going to get more and more. I'm personally Xavi in. I see why some people are Xavi skeptic. If we lose to Swansea, I think the Xavi out brigade is going to grow a little bit bigger, and Gino's going to start getting twitchy about hitting the big red button.
Yeah, I think that's a tough one because I think he's been pretty good for us since he's come in. I'd say I'm happy in. If you looked at 2 losses in 16 against Birmingham and then against Millwall, who were a really tough side, in fairness, they completely dominated us. Now, score predictions wise, I think it won't be easy. And I think I agree with you, Luke. I think it'll be a 1-1. I think this is the perfect time for you to play us because we've dropped off a lot. I want to say if Potnick's going to score for you, I think you'll go ahead and then we'll get an equaliser. I would like a clean sheet. But when I'm looking at the defence, I'm thinking we don't look that solid in that position. So, yeah, I think it'll be tough for us to get a clean sheet or a victory because if you look at Cabango, like you said, he's a very influential player for you, your captain. So I think it'll be tough to get past him. And Vigouroux, a very, very good goalkeeper. So, yeah, 1-1 for me. Now, that concludes tonight's episode. A big thank you to Luke for joining us. I will put Luke's channel and his X in the link in the description so you can have a look at his channel. And obviously, if you haven't seen it, Do Not Scratch Your Eyes did a thing with Luke. So if you want to listen to that, please do. We will be back next week for our Southampton preview and deadline day, Monday. Make sure you're here. We're promoting it on X and make sure to give us a follow. like and subscribe. And thank you ever so much for watching. You Horns!